Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: seizing Russia's frozen $300 billion is legal, urgent, and right. Gaza and the end of the rules-based order. The arsenal of autocracy. You know I'm right, more people are needed to serve in U.S. military. Panel investigating Maine's deadliest shooting to hear from state police. Seizing Russia's frozen $300 billion is legal, urgent, and right. Bloomberg. An open letter will be delivered to the UN next week by a group of international lawyers, including Philip Zelikow of Stanford University, urging the confiscation of Russian assets as reparations for war crimes committed during the invasion of Ukraine. The International Law Commission has published guidelines that are well suited to the situation, the letter will argue. The monetary reparations could be used to rebuild Ukraine and to fund its military. Gaza and the end of the rules-based order. Foreign affairs. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza has been characterized by war crimes and violations of international law. Israel's campaign to eliminate Hamas has resulted in the displacement of Palestinians, indiscriminate attacks on civilians and civilian objects, and a prolonged blockade that has left the region largely uninhabitable. The United States and many Western countries have supported Israel, providing military assistance and opposing calls for a ceasefire. This complicity in the human rights crisis in Gaza signals the erosion of the international rule of law and the end of the rules-based order. The principle of universality, which states that all individuals are endowed with human rights equally, lies at the heart of the international human rights system. However, this principle has been undermined in recent years, particularly since the war on terror began after 9/11. The tactics and methods used in this war have been adopted by governments around the world, leading to the loss of civilian lives and the erosion of international law. The conflict in Gaza is a manifestation of this erosion, as Israel's actions have disregarded the restraints set by the post-World War II system. Western governments have largely supported Israel's actions in Gaza, failing to denounce its unlawful actions and calling for a ceasefire. The United States, in particular, has defended Israel's tactics and refused to publicly support measures that would save Palestinian lives. This complicity has come at a cost, as Western countries have lost credibility and influence in the global South. The consequences of abandoning the rules-based order are more instability, aggression, conflict, and suffering. The only check on violence will be more violence. To avert this worst-case scenario, all military operations must cease, civilian hostages must be released, and the siege of Gaza must be lifted. The International Criminal Court must deliver indictments for crimes committed by all parties to the conflict. An international and inclusive process must be established to address historical grievances and ensure the security and rights of all populations. Time is running out, and if history repeats itself, widespread anger and instability will continue on a global scale. The arsenal of autocracy. Foreign affairs. North Korea is thriving amidst global upheaval and is taking advantage of wars in the Middle East, Europe, and Africa to spread death and destruction through arms sales. Despite being isolated from the international community and prohibited from buying or selling arms by UN Security Council resolutions, North Korea has become an arsenal for the United States' adversaries. Its weapons have been found in the hands of Russian-backed forces in Ukraine, Hamas in their assault against Israel, and a Sudanese paramilitary group. The Kim regime stands to benefit financially, strategically, and technologically from these arms trade relationships. Urgent action is needed to stop this trade and its destabilizing effects. The United States must mobilize a coalition to increase international awareness, strengthen detection, oversight, and sanctions compliance. If these steps are not taken, North Korea will be able to finance further weapons testing and development and spread mayhem and destruction. North Korea's relationships with authoritarian regimes are powerful and growing stronger. It counts China, Iran, Russia, and Syria among its friends and partners. Beijing and Moscow have gone from grudging participants in Western attempts to pressure Pyongyang into curbing its weapons programs to openly supporting the Kim regime. North Korea is confident in the gradual decline of U.S. power and is trying to engage an authoritarian network to weaken Washington's position. Arms sales are central to North Korea's strategy. They generate valuable income and allow the regime to build relationships and gain access to restricted technologies. Weapons sales also fuel confrontations and conflicts that challenge the United States and its allies. North Korea's support for Russia's war against Ukraine has caused its stock to rise in Moscow, and the recent summit between Putin and Kim has allowed Kim to hedge against his overdependence on Beijing. North Korea is producing short-range ballistic missiles and tank ammunition for Russia and may also be sending multiple rocket launchers, anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles, and field artillery. A new strategy is needed to deal with North Korea's growing relationships with other authoritarian regimes and the threat posed by its proliferation. You know I'm right, more people are needed to serve in US military. Yahoo! All the military services are desperate for recruits. This means waivers for past minor misconduct or some physical ailments are available as a relaxed age requirements in some cases. Benefits begin immediately upon acceptance, including decent pay and allowances for uniforms, food and lodging. Top-notch medical care is available to you and your family for free or at a low cost. Panel investigating Maine's deadliest shooting to hear from state police. Associated Press. A panel investigating the deadliest shooting in Maine's history is set to hear from commanders with state police, which led the multi-agency law enforcement response after 18 people were gunned down at a bar and bowling alley in Lewiston. China is learning to prepare for a drawn-out war after watching Russia struggle for years in Ukraine. Think tank. Yahoo! China is preparing for a long-drawn war after observing Russia's conflict in Ukraine, according to the International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS. The report highlights China's new recruitment measures, which suggest it is preparing for a slow, plotting war in the Indo-Pacific region. The IISS added that China has been gleaning lessons from the conflict in Ukraine, including a shift in military space toward the discussion of drones and the concept of low-altitude dominance. ND Football, Notre Dame heading to Yankee Stadium for Shamrock Series return in 2024. Yahoo! Notre Dame will celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Four Horsemen backfield this upcoming football season. The occasion will be celebrated in Shamrock Series format, with the brand returning for the 2024 season and will feature the Army Black Knights for the third time in the series' history. RPT war with Hamas dents Israel economy but strong rebound seen afterwards. Yahoo! Israel's economy is expected to rebound in 2025 if the conflict with Hamas remains contained in Gaza. The economy had been expected to grow by around 3.5% last year, but the conflict brought the economy to a standstill. Preliminary data is expected to show a double-digit contraction in the fourth quarter of 2022 due to declines in consumer spending, investment, and service exports. However, economists expect the economy to grow by around 2% in 2023, with projections for 2024 between 0.5% and 2% and a more rapid expansion in 2025. Putin is now going after people's money and property if they criticize the war in Ukraine. Yahoo! Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a law allowing authorities to seize the assets of those convicted of spreading fake news about Russia's armed forces and committing crimes detrimental to national security. The move comes in addition to a law passed earlier this year that imposes jail terms and fines on those spreading fake news against the Russian military. The new law is seen as a further crackdown on critics of Russia's war in Ukraine, with several people having already been jailed for criticizing the conflict. Estonia's FM warns Baltic states have 3 to 4 years to prepare for Russian assessment of NATO capabilities. Yahoo! NATO has approximately 3 to 4 years to enhance its defensive capabilities in response to Russia's military activities, according to Estonia's foreign minister, Margus Tsahkna. Tsahkna stated that Estonia, along with Lithuania and Latvia, does not perceive Russia as an immediate threat due to its current focus on the invasion of Ukraine. However, he added that it must be recognized that Russia's war machine has started on a full scale, and Putin controls everything. Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia are seen as prime targets for Russia if it ever decided to attack NATO. Poland, despite its larger size, also feels vulnerable. Ladies and gentlemen, Sixth Doctor here, your resident observer from the sixth dimension. Today, we've got a diverse range of news stories to discuss. From the legal battle over Russian assets to the erosion of the rules-based order in Gaza, and from North Korea's thriving arms trade to the need for more recruits in the US military. Let's dive in, shall we? First up, we have an open letter calling for the confiscation of Russian assets as reparations for war crimes committed during the invasion of Ukraine. The letter argues that the International Law Commission's guidelines support this action. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but seizing $300 billion doesn't sound like small change. But hey, if it's legal, urgent, and right, who am I to argue? Speaking of war crimes, the conflict in Gaza has been rife with violations of international law. The ongoing campaign by Israel to eliminate Hamas has resulted in the displacement of Palestinians and indiscriminate attacks on civilians. This complicity in the human rights crisis signals the erosion of the international rule of law. It seems like the principle of universality, which states that all individuals are endowed with human rights equally, has been tossed out the window. Not a great look for the rules-based order, if you ask me. Moving on to North Korea, it seems they're thriving amidst global upheaval. Despite being isolated and prohibited from buying or selling arms, they've become an arsenal for the United States adversaries. Their weapons are popping up in conflicts all over the place, from Ukraine to Gaza to Sudan. Urgent action is needed to stop this arms trade and its destabilizing effects. Otherwise, North Korea will continue to finance further weapons testing and development, spreading mayhem and destruction. Not exactly the kind of neighbor you want. Now, let's talk about the need for more recruits in the US military. Apparently, all the military services are desperate for recruits, so they're offering waivers for past minor misconduct and relaxed age requirements. And the benefits? Decent pay, allowances, and top-notch medical care. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal, if you ask me. So, if you're looking for a new adventure, why not give it a shot? Uncle Sam wants you. In other news, a panel is investigating the deadliest shooting in Maine's history. They'll be hearing from commanders with the state police, who led the law enforcement response after 18 people were gunned down. It's a tragic event, and hopefully, this investigation will shed some light on what happened and how to prevent future tragedies. China is also making some interesting moves. According to a think tank, they're learning to prepare for a drawn-out war after observing Russia's conflict in Ukraine. They're shifting their military focus and gleaning lessons from the use of drones and the concept of low-altitude dominance. It seems they're preparing for a slow, plotting war in the Indo-Pacific region. I guess they've learned that patience is a virtue when it comes to warfare. On a lighter note, Notre Dame is heading to Yankee Stadium for the Shamrock Series in 2024. They'll be celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Four Horsemen backfield, so it's sure to be an exciting game. And speaking of football, Israel's economy is expected to rebound if the conflict with Hamas remains contained in Gaza. The economy took a hit during the conflict, but economists are projecting a return to growth in the coming years. And finally, Putin is cracking down on critics of Russia's war in Ukraine. A new law allows authorities to seize the assets of those convicted of spreading fake news and committing crimes detrimental to national security. It seems like Putin is taking a page out of the authoritarian playbook. Not exactly surprising, but still concerning. Well, that's all the news for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed my witty and informative take on these stories. Now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on these news items? Do you agree with the call to seize Russian assets? Are you concerned about the erosion of the rules-based order? And would you consider joining the US military? Leave your comments and questions below, and let's get the discussion going. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.